Alright, mapagpalang hapon po sa ating mga tagapakinig. Welcome po sa ating programang Sulong na Bayan. At tayo po'y nadinig sa iba't pang panig ng mundo. So we're live via streaming our FB page all over the world. So hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening as case may be. Lalong-lalo po sa Estados Unidos where I am right now. At ganoon po sa Gitnang Silangan, dyan po sa Qatar, Jeddah, Riyadh, the whole of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. At ganoon rin po sa ating neighboring countries. Where is that? Dyan po sa Down Under, sa Australia. Dyan rin po sa Japan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Hong Kong, Singapore, at syempre sa Myanmar at Vietnam. And then Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, lalong-lalo po sa ating mga kapatidang Muslim, Assalamu alaikum. Today, we're so honored to have our guest from the American Embassy to tell us about their Education USA. The Embassy's Education USA office is kicking off International Education Week. Yan po yung IEW with a series of projects and the release of the Open Doors Report, an annual survey produced by the Institute of International Education on foreign students and scholars in the United States. All Filipinos, all of us who are interested in studying in the United States are also invited to join IEW events from November 15 to November 19. Okay, let me have the video support. Jello, go ahead and let's show it on the screen. Jello, Kimi, or Jam? Are we ready?
Gusto mo bang mag-aral sa US? Get in touch with Education USA, a free college advising service in the US Embassy.
Education USA advisors can provide free advice and guidance on how you can study in the United States, either virtually or in person. Kung may gusto kang malaman tungkol sa universities, courses, college requirements, at financial aid sa US, check out Education USA today. Mag-send lang ng message to Education USA Philippines to sign up for an advising session.
All right. So today, to join us in our program, we're honored to have she's the cultural attaché of the American Embassy in Manila. She grew up in Miami, Florida. She's also a graduate of Boston University, and she earned a Master of Arts in International Relations at Webster University and a Juris Doctorate at Florida International University. Her diplomatic experience includes serving as a public affairs officer in Maseru, in Lesotho, and she's a vice consul in Guangzhou, China, and cultural affairs officer in Hong Kong. For now, she's the cultural attaché of our embassy here, American Embassy in Manila. Let's welcome to our program no less than Miss Nina Luis. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Can't complain. We're so happy and honored to have you with us right now. But first, I want to introduce to you a veteran journalist. She's already in here via Zoom, and she wants to ask all the questions she has prepared. Go ahead, Lizzie. We have Nina. Are you on?
Good afternoon. Hi. I'm very curious about your program. We had interviewed a while back. We had a story about your program about a year ago. So we would like to know how the program has progressed from them. So this is very welcome.
Sure.
Yeah, that was Matt Keener. That was Matt Keener, your predecessor. Used to be the cultural attaché. So we had an interview with him. So Miss Lizzie wants to know the follow-up. Go answer it, Nina.
Great. So I do remember I was actually working for Matt when he went on the show last year.
That's right.
Since then, a lot of things have changed since the pandemic, right? So one of the great things about what we found about the Education USA program that's kind of changed is that with everything moving virtual and with so many people now connected, we've been able to reach out to students all over the Philippines. Whereas before we were doing a lot of in-person work. So it was a lot of students from NCR primarily and from our advising center in Cebu. So now we have students from all over, and they are doing a great job working on their applications and trying to get scholarships to U.S. universities. So we're really happy that we've had a much broader reach, and we're able to help students all over. And we know that that'll continue now, even after the pandemic is through.
That's good to hear. You mentioned about scholarship, Nina. So, how can the Filipinos receive this kind of scholarship from the United States higher education institutions?
So that's a great question. There are a number of ways to receive scholarships. Most students get scholarships directly from the university that they have chosen. So we always recommend that when students are looking at applying to U.S. universities, that they prioritize universities that offer scholarships to international students. So there are two kinds of scholarships that most students get. It can be a merit-based scholarship, which is about their achievements, their grades. And then there are need-based scholarships. So there are some universities that will offer students money based on their family income and their need. And so there are even some institutions in the United States that will offer to meet the entire financial need of a student as long as they are accepted academically into the programs. So these are the kind of programs that we try to help our students match with, because obviously a U.S. education is very expensive. It's very valuable, but it's very expensive. And so helping students line up appropriate scholarships is really the bread and butter of what we do.
Right. You talk about, go ahead, Lizzie. Any other question?
I understand that city colleges, local colleges, seem to be less expensive than universities. Can Filipino students avail of education in such more affordable colleges?
So there's a wide belief that public universities in the U.S. are less expensive than private universities. Unfortunately, only students from the state that college is in. So even like I grew up in Florida, if I wanted to go to a university like a state university of New York, I would have to pay what's called out-of-state tuition, which is very expensive because our taxes, right, our state taxes are what pay for that. So so a lot of students do come to us and say, oh, I should go to a public university because it's cheaper. But that's not always true. One suggestion I have for cutting costs is the community colleges. So those are public colleges. Some of them offer a bachelor's degree program. Some of them offer associate's degrees program. And those tend to be significantly less expensive than private four-year institutions. So we do see a lot of students in the Philippines who are looking at community colleges. And we had a webinar, I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago, where we talked to students about going to a 2-year community college program and then how that can link to a 4-year degree at one of the California state universities. That's a really good way to save money.
Right. Talk about money, Lizzie. These are hard times, and Nina, because of pandemic, a lot of people are, shutting up their businesses and all. So Matt was like saying early on last year, there is like a financial, how do you can call it, package for, interested students. Can you expound on that?
Sure. So universities require, the students who are looking for scholarships, who are eligible for scholarships, have to fill out what's called a financial aid package.
All right.
So this is information usually about your parents' income, right? What kind of money they have in the bank, how much money they spend each month on certain things, and if they've saved up any money for your education. And then the university will use that to determine what the need is, like how much money you would need to attend the university. And so, as I mentioned before, these programs that offer need-based scholarships would look at that package and say, we hope we can meet your entire need. Maybe your family can contribute X amount of money based on what you provided in your package, and then we're going to provide the rest. And, that's kind of the ideal.
Okay. That's a relief for me. Now that I'm hearing it from you, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Go ahead, Lizzie, for another question.
I understand. You said something about a lot more people being connected today because we were forced by the pandemic to go online. Would you say that we even got better because of the pandemic? Going online.
Here, yeah.
Obviously, none of us wanted a global pandemic. That's not how we wanted to be connected. But, right, you have to take the good with the bad. So although it's been a tough year and a half now already, I like to think about the positive things. And some of the positive things that have come out of it are, a huge increase in bandwidth globally. And, a much larger connection and number of devices all over the place. So I remember when I arrived in the Philippines 2 years ago before the pandemic, I'm connecting with students in like Zamboanga. The reception was terrible, even on a regular phone. Trying to connect with them on a cell phone was really hard. And now all of those students have like really good, I guess it's 4G, and they're connected with us so easy. So it's really so different now. And so I'm really glad because those students were the ones who had a real hard time doing online applications, which is the norm now, right? We expect students to go online to each university or to do a common application online where they're going to upload essays and their transcripts and all of the information a university would need. And before that was very difficult. We saw students trying to go to like internet cafes and, there would be connection issues. They try to upload something and they just couldn't do it. And so I think a lot of that has really been resolved, which is going to make the application process this year so much easier for students.
Oh, that's cool to hear. So how have U.S. universities, your universities in America, adjusted to this pandemic? What is it like? How are they coping?
So, the pandemic hasn't been easy for anyone. What we've seen in the United States is it's definitely a state by state, city by city, and university by university decision on how they're moving. We have in the U.S. have tried to maintain a more open economy. So there haven't been mass closures. It's been more up to the university. We've seen some universities take a hybrid approach. So they're doing some days in person and some days online so that students can get into and see the professors face to face, but also reduce their risk in high areas by having some instruction at home. And then some universities have just stayed open the whole time, and others have had very high vaccine requirements. So, they've said if you're vaccinated, and vaccines are widely available in the U.S. as they are becoming to be widely available here, and we're very excited about that. So I expect that in the future, students from the Philippines going to the U.S. will have to be vaccinated and have proof of vaccination, and that's really how campuses are going to mitigate the risks.
Yeah, so you guys will relax some of your rules in immigration, or just students coming in?
That's a great question. So actually, as of just a couple days ago, the U.S. has really opened up for tourism. And, we had bans on certain countries coming to the U.S. because of high COVID numbers. And now the restrictions are more for travel are more based on vaccination status. So I would urge anybody who's listening who wants to travel to the U.S. to take a look at the embassy website. Or go to the broader website of the State Department at travel.state.gov, and you can find all of the requirements now to travel to the U.S., but pretty much it has to do with being vaccinated. That's how we keep people safe.
Okay. You're saying, Nina, before you enter into the package or the education internet, and all that you need to know is go on and log on to your website. All the requirements will be there. Right?
Yes, that is correct.
Just barge in and just say, okay, let me go to the United States next week. And then I'll find out for myself if this is worth it. Just random thoughts and then just go in. Is that not right?
No, you have to be prepared to travel, especially now during the pandemic. So every airline even has their own requirements, right? For when you're on board, whether you need a shield, whether you need a certain type of vaccination. And so it's really important that you, you check the country that you're going to. So hopefully you're going to the United States, and you'll check our website to make sure that you are eligible to travel and that you have a valid visa to go. And then, you check with the airline and with the airport personnel to make sure that you are cleared to actually get into the airport and travel.
And you will be allowed entry. Otherwise, you cannot go. Go ahead, Lizzie. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm curious about the International Education Week. How long have you held this observance? How many? Is it a matter of years or? And what's been?
We've been doing International Education Week. From my experience, we've been doing it, I think, for about 20 years. I've been with State Department for 12 years, and I remember celebrating since I first joined. So International Education Week is a really big week for us at the embassy. It's a great reason to get together with folks and talk about studying in the U.S. And for Education USA, it's a really good way to get the message out so that people understand that we have this service and that it's free. Because we do have students who pay a lot of money to private agents to get information about study in the U.S. And sometimes students think that they have to pay extra money to get this kind of help. But no, they can come to us for free. And we'll provide free, unbiased information about any university in the U.S. that they're interested in. We can help them with. So we don't work for any university in particular. Really, we're just trying to help the students and their parents get the information that they need to make an informed decision about study in the U.S.
So you can caution everybody listening right now here in other places not to just get into any online thing, but maybe go direct to you. Because there's a lot of brokers, disguising as, or maybe offering some of this that you're talking about, right?
Sure. And some of these agents provide a very valuable service. So, there are definitely great organizations that have a fee-for-service model where you pay and you get a lot of assistance, maybe preparation for your essays and preparation with tests that might be more extensive, one-on-one every day. But the embassy, we are here. We have a lot of advisors and we're happy to provide information. So, I think that we're probably a great place to start. And something that you mentioned is information that you find on the internet. So just to address that, if we have students all the time who find information on the internet that seems off, or they're not sure if a university is real. So I would welcome them to go onto the embassy website to reach out to us at Education USA. And, they can forward a web address to us and say, is this a real university? They've reached out to me and I'm not sure. And we'd be happy to provide information to the students on how to check and make sure that the people that they're talking to online are actual representatives from a real university.
So if that's what you're saying, you're not authorizing, just to make sure we're clear about this, you're not authorizing any agency or any group who would really do this type of thing, just the embassy itself. Is that right?
Like I said, there are organizations who provide great information, and students who have the financial means to hire an advisor, they can do that. That option is available, and some students find that very helpful. But we do offer these services for free, and our advising is not biased. So we're not getting any money from any specific university. So we won't say, oh, you're here, why don't you choose this university? Because if you do, I might get a bonus.
All right.
We'll ask you questions about what you're interested in, where you would like to go. Do you like snow? Do you like warm weather? And we'll try to help put together a list of schools. Or maybe we'll take the list that a student brings to us and say, really, you told me you wanted to study a STEM field, but this university is really more about arts or accounting. And so try to match what the student is interested in to the universities they're looking at.
All right, Lizzie, come on up. Go.
I heard something about a virtual parents conference in the, can you talk about that? Sounds very interesting.
Sure. So we had an event, I guess it was last week, where we had parents of students in the United States talk to parents of prospective students. So we thought a parent who has already gone through this process, who has put together all the financials and helped their child through that visa application process, and now has their child in the U.S. studying, would be a really good source of information for parents who are looking at universities in the U.S. and saying, I'm a little bit nervous about this, you know? I've never been to the United States. Do I just want to send my child on a plane? Like, how are things going to work? How am I going to transfer money to them if they have an emergency? How does a cell phone work in the U.S.? So, you know, these are things that we don't focus on in our Education USA advising because it's not stuff we're thinking about because we're not parents of international students. Sure. So I think it was really helpful to have that perspective of the parents of an international student to talk to these prospective parents.
Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned about the students, well, who wants to study, and you have to help them what options they want to. Where do Filipino students tend to study in your country now?
So
what more
we see a lot of students studying STEM fields. That seems to be the most popular right now.
Why? Why is it?
I think that it's because of the demand for careers in STEM right now. We're particularly seeing a lot of young women who are going to the U.S. to study in STEM fields, which I think is fantastic. And, you know, those are fields that have historically been male-driven. And so it's awesome to see so many young women who are looking into these historically male professions. And we see a huge demand in the Philippines, in the U.S., and everywhere around the world for STEM careers. But we have students really studying everything. We have students who go to study, you know, fine arts, and we have students who study business and entrepreneurship and kind of everything in between.
So what majors do you think the Filipino students tend to study in America, or which institutions, perhaps?
You know, engineering is really big. I get a lot of students, and this is anecdotal, but I get a lot of students coming and say, I want to study engineering. And sometimes they don't even know what kind of engineering they want to study. And so we have to dig down a little and see, you know, are you talking about civil engineering? Or, you know, what is it you really want to do? It's so broad. We also see a lot of students these days who are studying kind of computer science.
Yes, the IT.
And there's a huge demand for that. Right? Anything technology driven right now, I think kind of has a guaranteed income potential afterward. Right. And I think students are being very savvy about that. If their families are going to invest time and money in them studying in the U.S., they want to make sure they're going to get a really good return on that investment.
Right. Go ahead, Lizzie. We have
in the backgrounders that we received from the embassy, we read about the Open Doors report or the annual survey that the U.S. Embassy holds to, I guess, to monitor the outcome of the program. So what are the highlights of this study with regard to the Filipinos?
So usually every year at International Education Week, we launch the Open Doors report. And we did so this year as well, but it's a little bit of a weird year to launch it because it actually captures the prior year. So when I was looking at it earlier this week, I was kind of thinking, I don't know that this year's report actually captures very well the pandemic time. So, I mean, next year's report that captures 2020, I think 2021, we'll have a better idea of what happened this year. But I think that we can all guess that during the pandemic, student numbers dropped. And I think that was both international students. I think students worldwide decided that rather than pay for a virtual education, a lot of students stayed out of class this year and figured that they would pay and join when they could do it in person. Right. So I'm sure that that'll affect some of the numbers that come out from the pandemic. But we also have seen unprecedented interest going forward. So the current application cycle, we've had exponentially more students reach out to us than ever before. And I don't know if it's because of better connectivity or because people are at home more and kind of surfing the web more and reaching out. But I think that we're going to have a lot more applicants at U.S. universities from the Philippines this year than in years past.
Wow, that's cool to hear. In Cebu, I'm sure you had a lot of applicants. This is a big city. Go ahead, Lizzie. We have 3 minutes.
What was that?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot my question. I had something in mind.
Okay. What about ages? Yeah. Go ahead.
About the Asian hate phenomenon, has it had an impact on Filipino students in the U.S.? I'm very curious about it.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, I mean, it's an issue, and I would not be dishonest with you and say that this isn't something that's very concerning and that I watch from my seat here in the Philippines with horror. Yeah. So, race relations in the U.S. have a torrid history, and it's something that we've been working on for decades to, ensure a just society where people are inclusive and respectful of one another. And it's been very unfortunate to see some of these events unfold. That being said, U.S. universities tend to be a kind of a microcosm within a community and tend to be very diverse and very international, generally compared to the rest of the community, and are somewhat insular. So we like to, think that U.S. universities really have fantastic security and fantastic plans in place for if things do go wrong. And that, part of the tuition fees that you're paying is to ensure the safety of your students. So, the cautions that we give to students from the Philippines or any Asian students from all over the world going to the U.S. is that America is like a big city in anywhere else in the world. When you're in a big city, if you're going to a big city in the U.S., that you have to be vigilant. You have to be careful. You have to look out for yourself and always be aware of your surroundings. And, I hope that in the future, the entire world is a much safer place than it is now. But it is something, especially in race relations, that we are working very hard on. And I know the Biden administration has really put this at the forefront. So we'll be doing more and more to, foster a more unified society in the United States.
Yeah, we're one with you. We want that a safer and better place. Okay, last question. 1 second. Go ahead. I'm sorry, 60 seconds. Lizzie, before you part. Go.
Through all the years of the education USA, what have you noticed about? Have there been some success stories from the Filipino students? Can you cite some of them?
I can't mention any names, but we have had some fantastic students who have gone through the Education USA program, who have now graduated and returned to the Philippines, and have had fabulous, fabulous careers. I know that there's one student right now, a student at New York University who was with the government here and is now in a master's degree program in the U.S. and got really a fantastic scholarship package that we helped with. And so we're looking forward to his graduation and return next year to see what he does next. So there are great success stories, but I don't want to put any pressure on any individual students.
Right. All right. That brings to a close our first segment. Thank you so much, Lizzie. We're so happy to have you again, but next time we'll do it again. And thank you, Miss Nina, but we'll be right back. When we come back, we want to know some of the benefits of a U.S. education in the new normal. All right. Please drop the call and rejoin at 3:40. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Right. Philippine Standard Time is 3:31 in the afternoon.
Si Miss Lolly Acosta, Sulong na Bayan sa DWIZ 882.
All right, we are back with our Education USA being discussed with us with, of course, the cultural attaché Nina Lewis of the American Embassy in Manila. Okay, welcome back. And we have, I think, already and via Zoom, he is a Juris Doctor graduate from University of the Philippines. His name is Isaac Tamunting. Welcome, Isaac.
Hello, good afternoon, Tita Lolly. Thank you for inviting me once again.
All right. And we have our culture attaché in the American Embassy in Manila. That's Miss Nina Lewis. But before we took a break, I was asking the hanging question, Nina, what benefits actually if we, get into Education USA? What kind of benefits will we have, the Filipinos? Go ahead. Nina.
Sure. So I think something that's really unique about U.S. campuses is about how international they are. So it's really a global microcosm, and students are able to learn all kinds of skills like cross-cultural collaboration. They're working in English, which we all know is a lingua franca. And then, of course, universities in the U.S. have been known for decades as being fantastic institutions for higher education with amazing facilities. So we see a lot of students from the Philippines very interested in STEM careers and, having access to labs and, being able to do research with really, groundbreaking professors is an amazing opportunity that I think is quite unique to the U.S. Another opportunity that comes out of studying the U.S. that I don't think a lot of students know about is something called OPT.
What's that?
Optional professional training. So students can stay in the U.S. after they've completed their degree for 12 months in non-STEM fields and up to 24 months, 2 years in STEM fields, and work or intern in the field of their degree. And so this is
now.
this is something Filipino students love.
Okay, that's like OJT on the job training already. What you learn from school and you can apply it right away. Is that like you have to pay, I'm sure, for another?
No, I mean, it's not through the university. You're usually a graduate of the university, although some students do it during, like, in between semesters. But usually when you graduate, you can stay in the U.S. on your student visa to do one of these OPT programs. And unless it's an unpaid internship, oftentimes it's a paid internship or a paid job in your field where you're making money and you're able to kind of put everything that you learned in your university degree to work.
Wow. Did you hear that, Isaac? Isaac here is a Juris Doctor graduate from the University of the Philippines, as I said earlier.
Yes.
Did you want to do that? Go ahead, Isaac.
Yes, it sounds very interesting indeed. Thank you. Thank you once again, Tita Lolly, for this opportunity to ask questions here on your program. And thank you very much also, Ms. Lewis, for being with us and answering the queries we have. I'm just curious because I saw an article maybe a month ago, that it said that right now, if you would try to apply for a visa at the U.S. Embassy, the earliest appointment that you would get would be sometime in 2023. May I ask, is this true? And how does this affect those who would like to apply for student visas and to study in the U.S.?
Isaac, thanks for the thoughtful question. So I mentioned earlier in the show that the U.S. has really been closed to visitors for a long time. And because of the pandemic, we've also been really limiting, our visa flow. So it's just in the last few weeks that we've really started issuing visitor visas, and that the U.S. has really considered ourselves open for visitors. So throughout that whole time, we have been doing immigrant visas, and we've been doing student visas. So students have been continued to be able to go out. But because we've been closed for so very long, of course, there's a huge backlog at this time. And so, the next few months is going to be about our consular section at the embassy trying to come up with innovative ways to help get people their visas so that they can come to the U.S. and visit. Obviously, we want tourists to come to the U.S. We want people to be able to travel and people to see. A lot of Filipinos have family in the U.S. So we're just in the beginning of that process now, since the U.S. just opened up a couple days ago. And we're still figuring out how the travel situation is going to work now. But yeah, there is a backlog, and we're going to try our hardest to address that, to get as many people who want to travel to the U.S. as soon as possible.
So how is it affecting the ones who are interested to go on this Education USA?
So students are a different category of visa.
Okay.
And so there are appointments open, and have always been appointments open for students to apply for visas. So that was an area that even when the embassy, when our consular section was mostly really closed, we were only able to do very limited services during the pandemic, both for the safety of our officers, but really for the safety of the public. We didn't want people sitting in a waiting room in big groups, so following health protocols. But students were able to kind of trickle in and get their visas. So that's been on a continuous basis. So there's no backlog there.
Backlog. Process is like going on and continuing. Go ahead, Isaac, another question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lewis, for that answer. Another point that I'm interested in is you mentioned earlier about how Education USA helps students with getting scholarships and financial help from the schools and other institutions. May I ask, are international students also eligible for any form of student loan or any form of assistance, financial assistance, which can be paid back in the future?
I have seen limited instances where there are loans available, but I wouldn't recommend it. Really, if you look at any kind of newspapers or like the New York Times every day in the U.S. is talking about the student loan crisis. So, I really would not recommend that students go into debt to try to, or that parents go into debt to try to pay for their students' education. There are a lot of scholarship programs available, and, I think that the best thing is to save early when your kids are young.
Okay.
And then try to, for the students who are listening, get the best grades that you can, work really hard in school, have an exemplary record, do community service, be a volunteer, play a sport or a musical instrument, do all of the things that you can to be a well-rounded student, to put yourself in the best position so that you're competitive. And, it's a very competitive world, and scholarships are obviously highly sought after. So the more that you can do when you're in high school to make yourself competitive for those, the better. And those would be my recommendations.
Okay, you have an event coming up tonight. Is it tonight? The Road International Education. What is it all about? Tell us a bit.
So tonight we have a chat-up session with alumni of U.S. programs. So these are going to be some U.S. alumni who are talking about their experience studying in the United States. So this is a special talk for International Education Week, and it'll be on our exchange's Facebook page. And I think that some of the people listening today might be interested in joining that as well.
And what's coming up on November 19? Is it like a follow-up concerns in their college plans, or advising more on the advising part? Is that?
Yes. On Friday, we have a few advising sessions coming up. And so students can learn all about the whole schedule, the whole calendar of events on our Facebook page and on the embassy webpage. And some of the events are geared more toward graduate students, and some are geared more toward undergraduate students, and then others are just kind of for everyone. So I think it's beneficial to take a look at the whole schedule and see which events kind of, are for your demographic or would be the most interesting to you or your parents.
Well, Isaac here is reviewing for the bar exams. So Isaac, what do you have in mind if you want to go to the U.S.? Go.
Well, I heard that Ms. Lewis is also a Juris Doctor graduate, and I correct Ms. Lewis, yes. And I'm also interested in possibly pursuing an LLM or future studies in the field of law in the U.S. So that's what I'm interested in as of the moment.
That sounds great. And yes, I do have a JD, and we do see a lot of international students coming to the U.S. to get LLMs. I think that's a pretty popular career trajectory. An LLM is different than a JD because it's more specific. And so we see a lot of people who want to really show a specialization in a certain area coming back to do a very, very focused LLM for that reason.
Yeah.
And your specialization, Juris Doctor, or what?
So my Juris Doctors are pretty broad. It's a doctorate of law, but the area that I chose to kind of focus my studies in was international law.
Wow, that's even broader. Mind-boggling. Go ahead, Isaac. What else do you want to ask now that you have the opportunity to ask? Go.
Yes, thank you, Tita Lolly. Thank you, Ms. Lewis. So, in the latest news that we've been getting from the U.S. is that there's a record high when it comes to inflation, and I think prices are going up. Cost of living is going up right now in the United States. Has this affected any way the international students, and is it becoming more difficult for international students to complete their studies in the U.S. because of this inflation and higher cost of living?
You know, I don't have a great answer to that. So far, we haven't seen that. You know, a lot of the inflation that they're talking about has to do with housing prices, and that's very specific to people who are buying new homes. So students who are coming to the U.S. are generally renting, or they are going into a dormitory, which is pretty fixed in terms of the amount you're going to pay per month. And since the university owns those facilities, there wouldn't be any kind of resale or rent increase on those. Similarly with food, most of the undergrad students who go to the U.S. will live in a dormitory and they'll be on a meal plan. They'll live in an apartment in a dormitory that doesn't have like self-catered kitchens. So part of it is room and board, and you would be going down to the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that would be prepaid by the meal. So you're not getting charged for your chicken nuggets or your salad or your pizza. It's your, you know, you have 3 meals a day, and you swipe in and you get your meal, whatever it is. So in that way, inflation wouldn't get passed on to students. We do see, you know, every year or two, a lot of, you know, institutions will raise their tuition by, you know, a small percentage point. And of course that can really hurt pocketbooks, but, you know, that's more where you would see inflation, I guess, would maybe hit tuition.
So it's reasonably priced anyway. So that's the last thing that you have to worry, actually. But
I mean, a U.S. education is expensive, let's be honest, but is it valuable, I think, is the more important question. And I think all of us can agree that there's a lot of value in having a degree from a U.S. university, both in the skills that you'll build and in the cachet that it has when you go to seek work afterward. Be it in the Philippines, in the U.S., or globally. I think that the reputation of a U.S. education kind of shows that you would have a certain level of knowledge and expertise.
Okay. What happens, Nina, before you ask another question, Isaac, if you do not have English as your native language, you know, somehow English is the official language of America and is spoken by more than 80% of USA's population. Is it necessary for an international student or anyone to learn the English language?
It depends. It depends on what kind of degree you're seeking and what you're looking to do, whether you need to have the English beforehand, or we see some students go for what's called an English bridge program. So academically, they'll have been accepted into a U.S. university, but their English wasn't high enough. And so they'll do a bridge program at that university. So maybe they'll spend a semester doing intensive English work. And then the second semester, they'll start their real classes. Now, this isn't very common in the Philippines. I think even a lot of students here who think that their English isn't very good, when they compare themselves to students from other non-English speaking countries, they'll find that their English is very, very strong. Or even if they're not very confident to speak, that their, you know, their knowledge of Hollywood movies and all of these things, that there's just so much exposure to English and American culture here that the students sometimes don't realize how ingrained it is. But, you know, when you compare them with students, I worked for a long time in China and Hong Kong. And for those students, a lot of them, English really was a second language, and it was something very new to them. So even greetings and things were things we worked on. Whereas I think even, you know, small children out in the provinces, most of them will say, you know, hello, my name is.
Right.
So I think Filipino students do very well in U.S. universities because their English, their comfort with the English language and using it in an educational setting too.
All right. Isaac, go ahead. One more.
Yes. I became curious earlier when Ms. Lewis mentioned about food and board being included in whatever you would be paying for when you would be enrolling in a university. How about health insurance, Ms. Lewis? Given that, as we know, healthcare, especially in the United States, if you would have to pay it out of pocket, would really be expensive. Is there a way for international students to avail of health insurance?
Sure. Most universities, well, first of all, universities require that students have insurance, and they offer as part of your, it kind of looks like part of your tuition, but when you break down the line by line items, there is a health insurance, and it gives you use of the student health facilities that most universities have, which is like the clinic on campus. And that's what most students will use, is they'll use the clinic on campus for when they have a runny nose, for when, you know, they need a prescription. They would just go to the student health office, and it's free when you have your student health card. And then that student health card would also cover like catastrophic injury. If God forbid something really happened to you, you were in some kind of accident and you needed to go to the emergency room, it would kick in and it would cover up to a very, very large expense for emergency care.
Right. I'd say that's kind of challenge. Thank you, Isaac. But don't go away yet. There's like, that's part of the challenge that I'm going to ask. How are international students viewed in your country? How are they viewed? How are they treated? How are they,
I haven't been a student in the U.S. for about 15 years now. But I know when I was there, that the international students were really considered, it was part of the experience, was to meet all of these students from all over the world. And, you learn so much living with students in an international environment, and getting to learn other languages and try other foods and all of these things. So, actually, since I graduated from my last degree, I think things have gotten even more internationalized, and there are more and more students every year coming to the U.S., and campuses are getting even more and more diverse. So I know a lot of the American students also are doing, study abroad, and, feeling what it's like to be the international student. And I think we all benefit from it.
That's right. Okay, we had a mouthful. The time is like really fast. That's all the time we have. Give us a 60-seconder, Nina. What else do you want to say to our Filipino viewers and listeners all over the country? Go ahead, Nina.
Just if they're interested in studying in the U.S., just remember that the U.S. Embassy has our Education USA program. It's free, unbiased, accurate information about study in the U.S. So check us out on Facebook or our website and reach out, and we'll be happy to help you find a school, help you find scholarships, and help you on the path to study in the U.S.
Okay, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. This is not the last. Go on and check us out again if you have some other events forthcoming. So thank you so much, Nina. Really have so glad to have you for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lolly. Nice to meet you, Isaac.
All right. Thank you, Isaac. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
And see you soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. We want to say thank you. Siyempre sa ating naging kaagapay, si Jeric B, at si Hias, then si Jello, si Kimi, si Maze, she's back, and siyempre ang ating Alex Calda, station manager, at siyempre ang ating chairman, D. Edgar Cabangon. As I always say, keep God first in every area of our life, so He will direct our path. Thank you, TJ Rojas, our press and media coordinator in Public Affairs section of the United States of America here in Manila. Bye!
Si Miss Lolly Acosta, Sulong na Bayan sa DWIZ 882.